Where the fuck are we? What was I gonna cover? There was another thing. Oh, here. This is awesome. More psychotic commentary.
Goodwill, because I know there is a jumbo jet full of
$700,000 have been raised so far, which is awesome. Okay. And if you ask this guy, the Israeli spokesperson, apparently that humanitarian aid is actually bad and it's terrorism and it's aiding terrorism.
Medical supplies that is sitting in Egypt. The World Health Organization has appealed to Israel to please allow them to bring that aid in. I'm trying to understand, what is Israel's stance in not letting that aid enter into Gaza, where you know, because I know you have seen the pictures, people are struggling to survive there right now, and there's that mass movement of Palestinians to try to get out to the south.
The situations and the scenes inside the Gaza Strip are very difficult to watch, and I have to say, everyone in this country is emotionally exhausted and pulverized from the gruesome images that we've been seeing on our screens since the October 7th massacre. But it's really important to understand what the situation on the ground is in Israel. On Saturday morning, Hamas attacked and destroyed the crossing between Israel and the Gaza Strip, the Erez crossing. It went into the crossing, it mowed down everyone it could, it blew up as many facilities as it could, and that crossing...
Oh, yeah. They would totally let Gazans exit through that crossing right now if it wasn't for Hamas. Like, why did you even bring that up? Like, are you going to make the argument that you would allow Gazans into Israel? What are you, fucking crazy? Does anyone believe that?
Is no longer operational. Not only that, but the entire situation is a war zone right now. We've had over 6,000 rockets fired at Israel in the space of the last week. Many of those rockets and mortars flying almost on a minute-by-minute...
Oh my God, for a brief moment, when he said it's a war zone right now, I thought he meant like Gaza. No, he means Israel is a war zone right now. Like, still.
...basis on the area immediately adjacent to the Gaza Strip, such that essentially the only entry into Israel, the only access, the open points from Israel and the Gaza Strip, are the holes in the fence that Hamas blew up when it sent in its death squads on Saturday morning in order to butcher, behead, burn, and brutalize Israelis. Israel does not have an obligation to continue supplying the resources the enemy needs in order to continue advancing its assault.
That's awesome. That's insane.
Against Israeli civilians. But also the situation on the ground is such that Israel cannot be reasonably expected to allow deliveries through border crossings that no longer exist.
Eylon Levy for the Israeli government. Eylon, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, dude. Can't do humanitarian aid. It's only helping the terrorists. He also did an interview and got fact-checked.
By Eylon Levy, who's a spokesperson.
120 hostages who are being held in captivity by both Hamas and Islamic Jihad. And it's important to understand who these hostages are. We're talking about, in many cases, children as less than 1 year old. We're talking about babies, only a few months old, snatched from their parents' arms, often their parents killed. We're talking about elderly.
Yeah, he's worried that like the most well-oiled baby-killing machine is going to end up killing Israeli babies as well, alongside all the Gazan babies it's killed. Talking about the hostages, chat. There are Israeli babies in Gaza right now. Straight up. Yeah, they took hostages. I like that the government is making zero effort to even try and take the hostages out and has instead engaged in an endless bombing campaign. And Netanyahu has not once in the media talked about their efforts to release the hostages. Not once. Netanyahu also has not talked to the victims' families once. As of yesterday, Netanyahu has not faced a single person whose family members are held hostage inside of Gaza right now. Not one person. He hasn't seen them. He hasn't given them the fucking time of day. He does not give a fuck. They've been bombing the hostages relentlessly. Wait, he has? When did he do that? Oh, he finally did? As of yesterday, he had not met with the family members of the hostages at all. I'm assuming part of that is because they wanted to hand select the family members he did end up meeting with so he doesn't get fucking yelled at. Yeah, they probably hand selected the fucking families so that they don't scream at him and call him a fucking piece of shit war criminal and directly responsible for these hostages and their well-being. PM meets with families of Israelis kidnapped to Gaza, vows to prioritize their return. Yeah, really? You vowed to prioritize the return? Is that why you've been fucking bombing them, possibly killing some of them too? The far-right Israeli government cares more about killing Palestinians and ethnically cleansing Palestinians than they do about preserving the safety and security of Israeli citizens. Anyway, let's watch.
People well over the age of 80 who are now suffering inside the Gaza Strip without medication, without basic facilities, obviously without any access to the Red Cross, because that's not a mercy that Hamas or Islamic Jihad have ever given to Israeli hostages. And Israel
Well, we're going to
demands
get
their
onto the
immediate and
humanitarian
unconditional
issues in a
return.
moment. How likely is it that you can bring those hostages back alive?
Israel is demanding the immediate and unconditional return of the hostages. And it's very important for us. You mentioned before the British government's position on the current crisis, which really the British government has been absolutely solid in its support for Israel. But it's really important for us that the international community raise its voice and make clear that this, one of the biggest hostage crises that certainly...
Yeah, bro. Joe Brandon has to be like, hey, Hamas, can you please release the hostages? So then they'll be like, oh, okay, got it. My bad, bro. Yeah, Joe Biden is going to be like, look alive, Jack. Release those hostages, Jack. And then Hamas is like, oh, shit, bro. Yusuf Al-Bidan, my favorite president, bro. My favorite president. Fuck. Let me release now. Like, what do you think? That's what's going to happen? What stupidity? How stupid?
I can ever remember. It is absolutely unacceptable to raid a village, murder everyone you see, grab babies, run with them into the Gaza Strip and hold them in captivity. And the world must demand their immediate and unconditional release. That is our demand.
President Biden has said that the United States will stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel. At the same time, he has urged Israel to stay within international law. Is it?
Barely.
Absolutely. Israel is responding forcefully to Hamas because its aim in this war is to destroy Hamas's military and governing capabilities inside the Gaza Strip in response to what was the world's worst terror attack in history after 9/11 just last week. President Biden said that happened to the United States. He would expect its response to be swift, overwhelming, and decisive.
Yeah, I mean,
and that is exactly what it.
I mean, if that's the world's worst terror attack that ever happened since 9/11, okay, which is not wrong. I can think of a ton of American actions and a ton of Israel actions as well that are far worse than that. But of course, these are states, so when they do it, it's not considered an act of terror.
Israel is doing. And on top of that, on top of taking this action to target Hamas specifically, Israel is taking steps to ensure that civilians are not hurt. That's the reason, for example, that Israel has been urging residents of northern Gaza to vacate south towards the southern Gaza Strip in order to
can bomb them with ease.
Get them out of harm's way, because Israel doesn't want to hurt civilians. We do not want to see any more suffering. Honestly, everyone in Israel is emotionally exhausted after the atrocities that we saw last week. We don't want more suffering. We don't want civilians to get hurt. But in order for civilians not to get hurt, in order for us to be able...
Can someone ask him the question, if you don't want civilians to get hurt, why'd you shut off their electricity and their water and their food? And you went on American television before this interview and said, all humanitarian aid into Gaza is just aiding the enemy. Sir, why is your greatest fear babies, Palestinian babies? Can you explain to me? I just want the talking points. You're the PR guy. Can you explain to me how I can make this work and explain to the world that, like, babies are very scary when they're Palestinian? Please. I would like to know.
To target Hamas's infrastructure in order for us to be able to get to every single terrorist who was involved in the atrocious ISIS-style massacres that took place last week, we need civilians to get out of the way.
Well, I'd like to talk to you about that order to flee. I would hang on a minute.
Please.
This is an interview, and I'd like to put the questions to you
Please.
that my listeners want answered.
Please, I'm happy to hear.
On the issue of the order to flee, which is an order to 1.1 million Palestinians in the north of Gaza to move southward.
Like, I love when they say ISIS-style massacres, right? And it is true, to a certain degree, that these were brutal, these were ruthless attacks, right? Except ISIS doesn't have an air force. So, of course, we will never be able to know if ISIS-style massacres, if they did have an air force, would resemble what Israel is doing. So you can't really say that, can you? That's the whole point. That's the entire reason why you could get away with being like ISIS-style massacres, while what you're doing is not ISIS-style, because ISIS doesn't have a fucking air force. But if they did, I'm 100% certain it would look exactly like what Israel is doing.
And your original time frame was 24 hours. Jan Egeland, General Secretary of the Norwegian Refugee...
Bro, they delivered a stay of execution to a hospital. I'm sorry. That is like pure villain shit. Two hospitals. One, Doctors Without Borders Hospital, had to beg the Israeli government to not blow them up because they still have patients there. Bro, you're acting like Palestine doesn't have blood on their hands too? No, Palestine doesn't have blood on its hands. Okay? Palestine does not have blood on their hands. Ridiculous. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. You're gross and you're a piece of shit for basically explaining what your position is. All this time, you're like, Hamas, 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 Hamas. But then the moment of truth is revealed. You go, Palestine has blood on its hands. Really? While I'm talking about a Doctors Without Borders hospital being blown to fucking bits and them begging Israel to deliver them a stay of execution, and you're like, well, Palestine has blood on its hands. You gave it away. You gave it away.
Refugee Council, and a man who, as you know, helped broker the Oslo peace accords, says the Israeli order for civilians to move from north to south is impossible and illegal. It amounts to forcible transfers and a war crime. That's right, isn't it?
It is.
No, absolutely not. And let me explain why. The United Nations cannot have its cake and eat it. It cannot say on the one hand that Israel
He is not
cannot
from the
target
United
Hamas.
Nations. He is not from the United Nations. He is from the Please let me ask the questions and correct you on factual matters. I have read to you a quote from Jan Egeland, who is General Secretary of the Norwegian Refugee Council. He is also a man who helped negotiate the Oslo peace accords. Would you react to the quote I put to you, please?
Thank you for that factual correction. I would refer to anyone making the claim that Israel should not be urging civilians to get out of the way temporarily for their safety, that they cannot have their cake and eat it. They cannot, on the one hand, say that Israel cannot target Hamas infrastructure because civilians might get hurt, and then at the same time tell it not to ask civilians temporarily to evacuate the combat zones because they might be displaced. The consequence of that is to tell Israel that it has no means to exercise its...
Yeah, you got it. No, it's great. I'm saying that, yeah. Israel does not have a right to defend itself by killing civilians. 100%. Can't do it. Sorry, you should be shackled for that, okay? You should be burdened emotionally for being able to justify this. But no.
Legitimate right to self-defense, a right that all the leaders of the free world have acknowledged, in fact, saying Israel has a duty to do so. If they're telling Israel it cannot attack Hamas targets and it cannot ask people to get out of the way, it is telling us that in response to the worst terror attack in world history after 9/11, there is nothing Israel can do. And I'm afraid that's not an option.
Which creditable humanitarian organization has said that Israel does not have the right to self-defense?
Well, I'm explaining that that is
the UN
logical...
said that? Because it hasn't.
Well,
nor
Sangeeta,
have the Norwegian Refugee Council.
Dude, it's so funny.
Which credible international...
This is why it's funny when motherfuckers are like, why don't you debate it intellectual? Bro, this guy's entire job is to defend the IDF actions, right? And his arguments are still pure fantasy. It's pure fantasy. And it's not because he's bad at it, chat. He's not bad at it. He can't do anything. Because if you know at least like 30% of the facts on the Palestinian side, it's over. It is an indefensible position. You don't need to know about the long and convoluted history. You don't need to know about 1948. You don't need to know about 1967. You don't need to know about Yom Kippur. You don't need to know about shit. You don't need to know about the Oslo Accords. You could just simply say what's going on currently is unacceptable. Now, obviously, it's important for you to know about all of those things, but the reality is it is entirely too difficult to try and put a moral face on an apartheid regime. It is ugly, it's gross, it's disgusting, but it's not complicated. It is entirely and utterly uncomplicated, which is why, nah, bro, you were cooking when you said fuck knowledge. No, those are things. If I said fuck knowledge, then I wouldn't have spent the last 7 days for 10 fucking hours every day explaining the historical importance of certain things, certain points throughout history where Israel has been under attack or Israel has decided to attack and how we got here. Of course, I think it's important. What I'm simply stating is it's not necessary to argue against someone who is trying to defend the apartheid state while also still trying to maintain morality on their side. As long as the other person knows like at least a little bit about the plight of Palestinians. You can't do it. You cannot fucking do it.
National humanitarian organization. Can you name it? Which is it?
No humanitarian organization has made that claim explicitly.
So why are you saying that they have?
Because I'm saying this is the logical consequence of arguing that Israel cannot target Hamas infrastructure.
That is your opinion.
Bro, I love that. He's literally saying like, no, we have to kill babies. Like, I can't believe the world is telling me that Israel has a right to defend itself. But like, yeah, I want to defend myself from babies. Why can't you love me while I kill the babies? It's really fucked up. Come on, you let me do it for the first 6 days. I've been doing it for like 7 days now. Why can't I keep doing it? You didn't say anything for the first 7 days. You didn't say anything for the first 75 years either, by the way. I'm just talking about this last bombing campaign.
Is not the logical consequence.
It is a logical consequence of saying that Israel cannot target the areas while civilians are there and that civilians cannot be asked to move. The only way that Israel can target Hamas terrorists without harming civilians is if they get out of harm's way. And that is what Israel is politely requesting they do and move to safer areas in the southern.
Dude, please, this lady has to ask the question, why did you shut off the entirety of the fucking water, food, and electricity? You are not politely requesting. You have killed 7,000 people so far, right? Is it 7,000? I don't want to get the numbers wrong. I know 500,000 people are displaced. It's 7,000. It's 2K plus. It's like definitely more than 2,000, but I think it's 7,000 injured. Oh, it's almost 10K wounded now. The numbers rise every day. I can't keep up with it. I'm sorry.
Southern Gaza Strip so that we can target the ISIS-like terrorists who perpetrated last week's massacre. We do not want civilians to get hurt. And in order for civilians not to get hurt...
Bro, why? Why did you shut off the electricity?
We're asking
and food and water
to get out of harm's way. By the way, just like Israel has evacuated large parts of southern Israel, all the kibbutzim along the border, even the city of Sderot today, Israel is encouraging
the size of Israel is in no way comparable to the size of Gaza. Let me read this quote to you. This is
Get her!
EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. Israel has the right to defend itself, he says categorically, but it has to be done according to the right of international law and humanitarian law. Some decisions are against this international law. I put it to you again. He is right, is he not?
Israel does not want civilians to get hurt. In order for that to happen, we are asking them to get out of the way. We categorically reject the assertion that asking civilians to vacate a combat zone temporarily so that we can target the terrorists who have embedded themselves under their homes, under their hospitals, and under their schools is against international law. Israel has a legitimate right to defend itself, as the United Nations, as the European Union has made very clear. And in order for us to...
The European Union and the United Nations also made it very clear that Palestine has a right to defend itself too, but we're not going to have that conversation right now.
We need civilians to get out of harm's way. And I would argue that what is impeding our efforts to minimize civilian casualties in the Gaza Strip is certain members of the international community telling the residents of Gaza that they should not be vacating. And tragically, we have evidence that Hamas...
Sorry, just to interrupt once more. I do apologize,
Please.
but I must jump in. Did you just
That's
say
all right.
humanitarian agencies are telling Gazans not to move? Is that what I just heard you say?
I'm saying that instead of urging them to comply with Israel's advice to clear out temporarily from the combat zone.
If she doesn't ask in the next minute how he can say this while Gaza does not have electricity or food or water, I am going to lose my mind. Ask that question. Ask that question.
Zones. They are saying that this is impossible and adding complications to our efforts to keep civilians out of harm's way. That in itself is something that is going to endanger civilians, in addition to Hamas's efforts to physically stop Palestinians from getting out of the safe zones. The Israeli army has released photographic evidence of roadblocks that Hamas has established to stop civilians getting out of harm's way.
This is my favorite argument. They're like, yeah, Hamas doesn't want civilians to leave. Here's some fucking fake ass bullshit. Okay. Hamas doesn't want civilians to leave. And it's like, first of all, here's one way to effectively neuter that propaganda. Stop bombing them. There you go. Don't play into the hands of Hamas, I guess. Like, they're making it seem as though like Hamas is this like incredibly powerful unit that has like mind control capabilities. Why are you admitting to being owned, I guess, if that's the case?
And we have evidence that Hamas has been stealing people's car keys as well in order to keep them in the combat zone so that they...
Hamas wants only the people that support them to die? Yeah. They're doing mind control because they're doing mind control by like getting Israel to basically tell Egypt not to open the Rafah border so that they can't even fucking leave if they want to. They're doing mind control to 2 million people and they're able to just stop them. These people who are not afraid of their houses being bombed are afraid of Hamas. These people who live under constant threat of bombardment are just like, oh no, not the Hamas guy. Like, bro, at that point, he has no option. Like a Palestinian, a Gazan has no option at that point. He'll just get fucking slaughtered then. And there are people on the ground. There are literally millions of people on the ground documenting in spite of the fact that Israel has shut off their electricity and internet. Why is nobody in Gaza saying Hamas is stopping us from moving? Please help us. Why is nobody saying that? Is it because all 2 million are effectively under Hamas mind control? Is that what it is? They're just all hiding the truth. Well, here you go. Put the fucking internet back on. Put the electricity back on so you can shine a bright light on how terrible Hamas is.
They can martyr themselves for the cause. We are not Hamas. We do not share their same worship of death. We are a democratic country that wants life. We don't want more people to be hurt. That's why we are asking them to evacuate temporarily from the combat zones.
You are indeed a sovereign state. You are, in fact, the only democracy in the region. You are well respected.
Fuck you, dude. Only democracy in the region, my ass. Let me tell you something. You cannot be a fucking democracy when you have an apartheid state. You would never say that about South Africa. You cannot say that about Israel. That's fucking bullshit. Turkey is a better democracy. As much as I fucking hate the Erdogan administration, Turkey is a more real democracy than motherfucking Israel. Suck my dick. I say this as someone who probably can't go back home, but that is the 100% truth. Turkish elections are not fair, but they are free for the most part.
Respected by your allies. You are also signatories to the Geneva Convention and Article 3 of the Geneva Convention, which, as you know, states that no collective punishment should be meted out to civilians for the crimes of combatants. Yesterday, I spoke to another spokesperson from the Israeli side. That was the IDF spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner. He said that Israel, like you, had given the 1.1 million Gazans plenty of time to flee. He said that the routes were safe. This morning, there are verified accounts that at least 70 civilians have died as a result of bombing on the routes out of the north to the south, and a further 200 are injured. That does not sound safe at all, does it?
I'm glad you mentioned that incident, because we should all take with a pinch of salt any information coming out of the Hamas-controlled Gaza.
That's crazy. Brother, we can see it. We saw it. Wow. Hamas-controlled New York Times. I feel like these guys would execute New York Times if they could. Like, they would bomb the New York Times building if they could get away with it. Maybe they will eventually when they feel like they can get away with it as well. These are independent verifications coming from organizations that, in my opinion, more often than not are siding with you rather than what the actual morality of the situation demands. These are not anti-Israel organizations. They're too pro-Israel.
Strip, knowing that it is waging a war of misinformation against Israel. The allegation that Israel bombed that convoy has not been verified independently by anyone. Well, questions that have been raised by independent OSIT investigators who have slowed down the video of that explosion, they see absolutely no projectile falling.
That's so funny. He's using a random OSINT video and not the one that they're actually talking about that happened the day before. Yeah, no, it's fun. I love pointing out a fucking OSINT video and not the actual, factual, literal thing that happened 2 days prior. That's insane. That's crazy. You got the BBC, NBC, all of these other fucking news outlets verifying the footage. And he's like, oh, well, what about the OSINT video? It's like, what do you mean OSINT video? The fuck are you talking about? That's like pointing to me, okay? And being like, well, Hasan said this. If her counter was like, well, Hasan said this. Like, what? It's just a guy, dude. A guy. Just a guy. He wasn't there. He didn't film it. He just found it on a Telegram channel. Didn't even fucking verify it properly. I can't believe this is the best they got. National Public Diplomacy Director at Prime Minister's office came out and was like, well, what about this random guy on Twitter? He said the fucking explosion was fake. Oh, okay. Never mind. I guess we should fuck off with all the independent investigators
from the sky, and have raised the very serious prospect that it was in fact caused by the explosion of a gas canister. Now, it was irresponsible of the international media to run ahead alleging...
That's not what people are talking about, man. Fuck you. That's not what people are talking about, you fucking jackass. They're talking about the 70 civilian casualties. 70 civilians that were assassinated when they were fucking on a convoy, on a truck. Fuck you.
That this was Israel based on information coming from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip and this terrorist war of propaganda against Israel. Israel is not targeting civilians. It is asking civilians to get out of harm's way. Every such allegation is being investigated, and I would hope that the international media in the heat of war also...
By the way, this is why it's funny. It's like his talking points are identical. The positions that he has brought up are fucking identical.
So wait to independently verify claims of atrocities, knowing that Hamas has an interest to make up atrocities in order to besmirch Israel and win sympathy among the international community.
I absolutely agree with you, and the report has come, is printed on the front page of the Observer newspaper, and it does not come from Hamas. It has been independently verified by two independent organizations.
OSINT means open source intelligence, okay? There are some of the OSINT guys that are in here. Some of them are very thoughtful. Some of them are very smart. Some of them are former military. It just means Twitter, though. That's what it is. It's just Twitter. Guys on Twitter that find, that source it through like Telegram channels.
Let's turn to the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk. He says that the imposition of sieges that endanger the lives of civilians by depriving them of essential items, including food, water and medical supplies,
Rain, thank you for the 10 gift subs.
Breaks international humanitarian law. Your reaction?
The residents of the Gaza Strip are not going to starve. Period.
Food is running out. That means they will starve.
But it is important, I assure you, they will not. Israel is working with international partners to create humanitarian... I cannot obviously comment on the details of sensitive, confidential diplomatic discussions.
Well, give us a timeline then. Time is running out.
I cannot give you a timeline,
Why
but
not?
I can tell you that Israel is working with international partners to establish humanitarian frameworks in the southern Gaza Strip that will help to ensure the safety of Palestinian civilians who heed Israel's advice to evacuate the combat zones to areas where it will be safer. And it is important to understand, I think, the reality that is taking place on the border, because I think some people don't understand that the entire area around the Gaza Strip is a war zone. People talk about
We
opening
absolutely
the
do understand it on this program, I'm afraid, because we had a 20-minute interview, which is far longer than LBC normally does, with your colleague, as I say, from the IDF, talking about borders. The World Food Programme says that it has 2 weeks' worth of supplies for civilians, including medical supplies, waiting to enter via the Egyptian Gazan border. Will you allow that aid in?
Your question is whether supplies may be delivered through the Egyptian Gaza border. I would suggest that is not an appropriate question to be asking an Israeli government spokesman. I do not control that border.
Well, they say that they are being stopped by Israel, who've sealed the borders. Therefore, it is an entirely appropriate question to ask you. And that, in fact, was reported by the BBC just 3 days ago. Unless, of course, you're going to say they're not verified journalists either.
I will answer. First of all, Israel does not control the border between Egypt and the Gaza Strip.
Israel
does control the border.
It has sealed the entrance, hasn't it?
Israel has not sealed the border between the Gaza.
That is so, dude. That is unimaginably like a laughable, unimaginably a silly lie. That is crazy, dude. Yeah, no, totally. Israel has no say over the Egyptian border. Yeah, no, definitely. Oh, thanks, man. All of these other surrounding regions, like they hate Palestinians. We would like to send these refugees to other countries, but they don't want them. And it's like, first of all, it's wrong. There are hundreds of thousands of Palestinians living literally in every fucking border country. And secondly, it's so gross. You're like openly saying, I want to ethnically displace these people, but other countries won't take them. Also, another ridiculous take that I missed out on originally, where he's just said the Palestinians simply won't starve. He said
The residents of the Gaza Strip are not going to starve.
that's crazy. How? Wait, what? How is that possible? They're simply not going to starve. Yeah. How about why doesn't Israel take them? These refugees, plenty of which who still have houses inside of Israel. Why won't Israel take them? They have their houses right there. Oh, fuck. Other people are living in it now. But like they still have their houses there. Israel, take them. Take the refugees, bitch.
Period.
Food is running out. That means they will starve.
But it is important, I assure you, they will not. Israel
His answer is, I just know they won't. You don't know. The Gazan Palestinian is it's got a different haplogroup. Can go without food for many days. Look at me. Look at how proper I am. I put a suit on so you don't think I'm an animal. But I am. I am a barbaric piece of shit, despite my accent, which may convince you otherwise. He's like, yeah, the Palestinian is used to fasting in Ramadan for 30 days. They will be fine. They cannot starve because I will kill them personally with bombing campaigns.
is working with international partners
Which
to
ones?
create humanitarian. I cannot obviously comment on the details of sensitive, confidential diplomatic discussions.
Well, give us a time.
Yeah, trust me. He said, trust me, bro. We got humanitarian corridors, which they do, by the way. They do.
Timeline then. Time is running out.
I cannot give you a timeline,
Why
but
not?
I can tell you that Israel is working with international partners to establish humanitarian frameworks in the southern Gaza Strip that will help to ensure the safety of Palestinian civilians who heed Israel's advice to evacuate the combat zones to areas where it will be safer. And it is important to understand,
Which, by the way, like they should, of course, allow aid to go in, but also they should allow food to go in general. Like, what are you, fucking crazy? You cannot starve 2 million people. That is literally Holocaust shit. That is Holocaust shit. I don't understand it. I think a lot of people don't understand. When you talk about the Holocaust, the numbers, like the 6 million Jews that were killed in the Holocaust did not get killed overnight. There was also a mass starvation campaign in the camps. There was also similar things that Israel is doing right now in the Gaza Strip, identical things that Israel is doing right now in the Gaza Strip that was happening. It's so crazy because you think of the 6 million number and you don't understand the time frame that occurred. You don't understand how it occurred. You don't understand the time frame of how it occurred. So you think like Holocaust, 6 million, one day. It took years. It took years to kill millions of people. I don't think that people understand. And in that death and destruction, there were plenty of deaths through famine, illness, starvation, thirst, not having access to food, not having access to shelter. And then on top of that, directly fucking gassing victims. You cannot kill 6 million people in one day. You can't kill 2 million people in one day or in 6 days unless you literally just drop a nuke. Way more than 6 million died. Yes, I'm talking specifically just Jewish people. 6 million Jews, 11 million total. And then also on top of that, plenty of people that died fighting against the Nazis.
I think the reality that is taking place on the border, because I think some people don't understand that the entire area around the Gaza Strip is a war zone. People talk about
We
opening the
absolutely do
crossing.
understand it on this program, I'm afraid, because we had a 20-minute interview, which is far longer than LBC normally does, with your colleague, as I say, from the IDF, talking about borders. The World Food Programme says that it has 2 weeks' worth of supplies for civilians, including medical supplies, waiting to enter via the Egyptian Gazan border. Will you allow that aid in?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
The World Food Programme says that it has enough supplies to keep Gazans going.
It's like it doesn't
for
register
2
to me.
weeks, and that they can.
Wait, you mean to tell me that Gazans need food? Gazan babies? Oh, don't bring them up. I hate them. They are my enemies. The babies living in Gaza are my biggest enemies. That's why we must wipe them out. And now you're telling me they need food to survive? Ugh, I don't know about that.
Bring those supplies in via the Egyptian-Gaza border. Is Israel willing to allow those supplies into Gaza?
Your question is whether supplies may be delivered through the Egyptian-Gaza border. I would suggest that is not an appropriate question to be asking an Israeli government spokesman. I do not control that border.
Well, they say that they are being stopped by Israel, who've sealed the borders. Therefore, it is an entirely appropriate question to ask you. And that, in fact, was reported by the BBC just 3 days ago. Unless, of course, you're going to say
So
they're not
if I may
verified
answer,
journalists either.
I will answer. First of all, Israel does not control the border between Egypt and the Gaza Strip.
It is
Israel
sealed,
does control the border.
It has sealed the entrance, hasn't it?
Israel has not sealed the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt because we do not control that border. That is a border between
Why did an Israeli
the Arab Republic of
spokesperson
Egypt.
say that to the BBC just
That's so crazy. They don't control that border?
3 days ago, then?
I'm not aware of this specific report. I can speak to the reality inside Israel, which is that the main crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt was almost entirely, between the Gaza Strip and Israel was almost entirely destroyed on Saturday when Hamas death squads invaded, massacred everyone in their path, and blew it up. The only openings between the Gaza Strip and Israel at the moment are the holes in the fence that we're desperately trying to seal, and I wouldn't advise anyone to try to pass through those. We're talking about an area of active combat, rockets still falling on the area, Israeli forces trying to secure the scene to make sure that terrorists do not come out. The infrastructure does not exist on the ground for supplies to be delivered between Israel and the Gaza Strip because we're talking about an ongoing conflict zone.
He's so funny. He's like, rockets are still falling there. It's like, whose rockets, bro? Whose rockets are falling there? Okay, don't drop rockets there then. He's like, no, sorry, it's automatic. Rockets keep falling there. It's like, wow, dude, it's crazy that this, like, you know, who's dropping the rockets? Allah is dropping the rockets, you know? It's sorry, it's just a natural phenomena. He also said Hamas destroyed the border. I know. It's so fucking stupid because, what, was Israel going to allow people into Israel? They were going to allow Palestinians that they're fucking raining bombs on top of into Israel? Get the fuck out of here. Shut up.
And areas that are constantly being under attack from the terrorists inside the Gaza Strip who perpetrated the massacre that we saw last week. As I said, the world's worst terror attack since 9/11, and that is a terrorist organization that Israel is determined to destroy inside the Gaza Strip while minimizing harm to civilian casualties by asking them to get out of the way temporarily.
If the
until the fighting is over.
the WHO can get supplies in via the Egyptian border with Gaza that you say you have no control over, would you ensure the safety of the humanitarian convoy?
As I would refer you to my answer to your previous question, Israel is currently working with international partners to create a humanitarian framework that will ensure the safety of people in the southern Gaza Strip who get out of the way from the fighting in the north. Beyond that, I cannot elaborate, saying that Israel is working with our international partners to create that framework.
Understood, Mr. Levy. Let's talk about the hospital. You've just referred again, haven't you, to the northern part of Gaza. You accept that you have ordered 1.1 million Gazans to flee southward. Inside that northern territory is Israel's biggest hospital. That includes babies that are in incubators, that includes the elderly, that includes people that...
Damn, you're bringing up all of his enemies right now. What's up? I knew that this was going to be a biased program. You have brought up all of my greatest enemies and all of my biggest fears. Why must you do this? Don't ever bring up babies in incubators to me ever again. I will lob rockets extra hard.
That have just undergone operations. That includes people who are victims of, as Israel have described, the collateral damage done by targeting Hamas buildings. How do you expect...
You know he's mad. He's like, fuck, man. I hate babies so bad. I'm gonna kill them.
Patients to flee northern Gaza and move south.
If I'm not mistaken,
oh, I just reminded myself that you're a press member. I also love killing members of the press. Fuck. I forgot that you were a press member because you don't have the classic blue press vest on. But oh my God, if you put that on right now. My biggest enemies. I hate the media.
mistaken, Sangeeta, are we talking about the same hospital in the Gaza Strip underneath which the Hamas terrorist organization has established its military headquarters? Are we talking about the same hospital?
I'm asking you a question. How do you expect the patients that I have just...
He's so mad. He's like, I can't bomb that hospital. I can't bomb it. Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. Oh, I just want to fucking, I want to bomb that hospital so bad. I want to bomb the hospital so bad. Oh!
just described to you to flee.
I think the question that should be asked is why the Hamas terrorist organization
That may
has
be the question
established-
you want asked. That is not the question.
Dude, she's good. She's good. She's fucking good. It's like, nah, I know you want me to ask that question, which is what, you know, normally that is the question that you ask to guys like this.
I'm asking you, how do you expect patients in Gaza's biggest hospital to flee?
Israel wants to target the Hamas terrorists.
Yeah, Israel wants to target the babies, okay? We have made this very clear. Please stop telling me about my biggest enemies that I want to target. I want to target them. I will target them. I hate that you're getting in the way of me targeting them.
Who were responsible for the massacre last week. For that to happen, we need civilians to get out of the way. We understand
How
that may
do
be a very
patients
difficult task.
do that,
we
Mr.
understand
Levy?
that we understand that may be a very difficult task. That's why Israel has identified routes along which people may evacuate. That is why Israel has given them more time.
Yeah, no, we've given the babies in the incubators in the hospital ample time. So when we do inevitably blow it up, as we have done before, mind you, it will be valid and just. After all, sorry, if you're a fucking baby and, you know, a bomb is coming your way, well, guess what? You should have walked out of the direction of the bomb. Sorry. I gave you 24 hours, bitch-ass baby. You should learn how to walk by then. The fuck out of here, dude. Goo goo gaga. More like I'm not hearing you say I condemn Hamas violence. Fuck you mean goo goo gaga? That, to me, that doesn't sound like you're condemning Hamas violence right now. It's coming for you, dumbass baby. I'm about to fucking lob another missile in your direction.
What happens if they can't leave because they're sick?
I'm not going to speculate on what may or may not happen. What I'm saying now is that the people of Gaza, preferably with the encouragement of the international community, should do all that they can, make every human effort in order to evacuate the combat zone. Because Hamas has embedded itself deep inside civilian population, under the civilian infrastructure, inside homes, inside schools, inside hospitals. And in order for us to target Hamas, we would like as many civilians, as many as feasibly humanly possible, to get out of the way. Because Sangeeta, we are honestly sick of the suffering and we don't want to see any more images of suffering.
Yeah, I like that he ended the interview on a fun little note where he said, we don't want to prolong the suffering, which is why we're going to bomb the hospital. The swiftest way to stop the suffering is by bombing the hospital. Let's come on. We don't want to see more gruesome images, so we're just going to bomb the hospital.